The Tanglewood Bookshop by Lilac Mills, read by Nano Nagle. Chapter 1. Kazz Fernsby stifled a groan as the train lurched and she put her hand to her mouth, praying she wouldn't be sick. Despite the dreary, drizzly day, the train was warm, too warm, which didn't help with the nausea or the headache. She felt clammy, her palms were damp and her back was soggy, the long-sleeved t-shirt she was wearing underneath her fleece sticking to her skin. Swallowing hard and trying not to throw up, she unwound her scarf, dropping it onto the seat next to her, and unzipped her coat. She would have taken it off, but she simply didn't have the energy to struggle back into it when the train arrived at her stop. What a state to be in on a Tuesday morning, she lamented. Days off were far too precious to waste feeling ill, especially when it was her own fault she was feeling like this. A couple of years ago, she would have self-medicated the hangover with a fried breakfast and buckets of strong tea, but the thought of bacon, eggs, and fried bread made her heave, and she swallowed again, her stomach roiling uncomfortably. Gingerly, she rested her head on the back of the seat and closed her eyes, only to quickly open them again when the nausea increased. Why she had felt the need to knock back so many sambucas last night was a mystery. But she had worked all weekend, and today was her day off. So she'd made the most of last night. The problem was, she'd forgotten she'd promised to help her mum sort through the house this morning, and she only remembered when Mum had rung 3 times, because Kazz had slept through the first 2 calls, to check she was on her way. Feeling decidedly unwell, Kazz had rolled clumsily out of bed and stumbled into the kitchen, only to be glared at by Freya, the most uptight of her 3 flatmates. Apparently, and Kazz didn't know how true this was, because last night was rather fuzzy round the edges, Kazz had rocked in at 1:23 a.m., and the reason Freya knew it had been 1:23 was because Kazz had woken her and Mona up. Dorian, bless him, would sleep through a volcanic eruption, so at least there was one person who wasn't cross with her. After apologizing profusely and promising to cook dinner for everyone this evening, Kazz hoped she'd done enough to appease her angry flatmates. The train rattled over the tracks, jostling her, and she burped, pulling a disgusting face at the taste of second-hand flowery aniseed. The first thing she would do when she got to Mum's house would be to make a cup of tea. She would also try to force down a piece of toast while she was at it, in the vain hope she would feel better with something in her stomach. The idiotic thing was Kazz didn't usually drink much. Her idea of letting her hair down was a couple of single malts. But Rossiter, one of the front house staff at the restaurant where she worked, also had today off, so when he'd suggested going to a bingo session last night, Kazz had thought it was a great idea. She had never played bingo before, believing it to be the domain of old ladies with purple hair. But she had been seduced by talk of 2-for-1 cocktails and big prize money. She hadn't won anything. Who knew bingo could be so viciously competitive? But she had enjoyed several drinks. This morning she bitterly regretted enjoying quite so many, and vowed never to touch sambuca again, or nachos with cheese, because she distinctly remembered eating a sharing plate, all by herself. Kazz stared listlessly out of the window, watching the familiar East London landmarks roll by. She'd lost count of the number of times she'd made this journey over the years. The house had originally belonged to her grandparents, although belonged was a bit misleading because they'd rented it. However, they had lived there for as long as she could remember, and when Nano died, and Grandad flatly refused to move into somewhere smaller and more manageable, Kazz's mum had eventually been forced to give up the lease on the little flat she'd lived in above the convenience store that sold mainly Russian food and move in with him when he became too ill and frail to look after himself. Her mum had kept the place on after he'd passed away from cancer. That had been over a year ago, and Mum hadn't got round to sorting out the house until now. Kazz idly wondered what had prompted her mother to do it today, and wished she'd decided on next week, or the week after. But she supposed it was long overdue, and she only had herself to blame if she wasn't firing on all cylinders this morning. Never mind, not drinking sambuca again. Kazz vowed never to touch another drop of alcohol for the rest of her life. When her phone trilled, she thought it might be her mother making sure she was actually on her way this time. Or it could be the restaurant, because Freddie Finch, or Frederic, as he preferred to be called, was renowned for summoning his staff into work on their days off. Something she objected to frequently and vociferously, much to Freddie's annoyance, even though she invariably went in to help him out. Thankfully, it wasn't her boss, and she managed to dredge up a smile because she saw that she had a message from Stevie, even though it was a photo of a cake. "Today's special," the message said, "toasted marshmallow and ginger cake." Kazz grimaced. Stevie was one of the best pastry chefs she knew, but Kazz wasn't in the right frame of mind to appreciate it. Stevie had been Kazz's best friend since they were in infant school. The pair of them were opposites in looks. Kazz, short and dark-haired, Stevie tall with ginger hair, although she insisted it was chestnut, and in personalities, Stevie being flirtier and a bit of an airhead. Another message from Stevie followed. "What you doing today? Working?" Kazz's thumbs flew over the screen. "Helping Mum clear out Grandad's house." She added a sad face emoji. "Gotta be better than work, though." "Would rather be in bed. Heavy night." She added the green-faced emoji to that one. "Ha ha! I thought you were supposed to be the sensible one." Yeah, Kazz used to think that too, until Stevie's Aunt Peggy had left Stevie enough money to open a little tea shop on the English-Welsh border, which was a far cry from London, where they had both lived and worked. Stevie's inheritance hadn't stretched to buying a space in the city, so she had been forced to look further afield. Kazz had been there at the start, from being at Stevie's side during Peggy's funeral. Kazz had had a soft spot for Stevie's aunt and had wanted to pay her respects just as much as supporting her friend. To attending the auction where Stevie had bought the property. Kazz had even helped to set up the tea shop, trawling around boot sales for china and other bits and bobs with which to fill it. Kazz distinctly recalled how envious she'd been at the time, not about moving to Wales, but about being able to afford a business of her own. She would love to be able to do that, but as things stood at the moment, she couldn't afford to open a burger van on an industrial estate, let alone a cute tea shop in a chocolate box village. And neither was she likely to be left any money in a will. Her granddad, bless him, hadn't had a bean to his name when he died, and her mum wasn't exactly rolling in money. Stevie was one lucky, lucky cow. To top it all off, Stevie had settled down with a gorgeous man whom she would be marrying next year. And now it was Kazz who was getting blotto on a Monday evening, when that had been the sort of thing that Stevie used to get up to. Another message pinged onto her screen. "Why, out on a Monday? Party? Bingo!" "Bingo?" Kazz was about to respond when her phone rang. Stevie had got bored with messaging. "Here's me imagining you going to loads of parties and clubs, and you're going to bingo?" was her friend's opening salvo. Kazz sighed. "What can I say? I'm living my best life. Who did you go with? A guy?" There was a whole world of innuendo in the word. "Rossiter." "Ooh, are you and he? We're just friends. Why are you phoning me on a Tuesday morning? Are you bored? I'm waiting for some dough to rise, and I wondered what you'd got up to at the weekend." "Work, mostly," she sighed again. Okay, my lovely, what's wrong? Stevie demanded.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?